Welcome back to Teresa's Dead. My name is Theresa and I'm very much alive. I have an awful, garbage, filthy mouth, so viewer discretion is advised. If you're not into that or weird shit in general, this is definitely not the place for you. Feel free to exit the video here. No harm, no foul, but I remember our time fondly. Why, hello, my little pumpkins. In today's video, we are feeling our Disney fantasy today. Listen, as a weirdo Disney adult, my makeup dick was fully torqued when this collection came out. Sigma decided to bestow upon us the wonderful, the beautiful Cinderella collection. In this collection, you get an eyeshadow palette, a cheek duo, some lip products, as well as some brushes. So in today's video, all I'm going to be talking about is the eyeshadow palette and the cheek duo. Everything else, didn't really fucking care about. But I will say though, if I didn't get this on a discount, I would be so pissed. This is not what I thought the collection was gonna be. So let me explain. Disney Cinderella eyeshadow palette retails for $49. All your beauty dreams will come true with this limited edition eyeshadow palette featuring 14 dazzling hues in matte, shimmer, and metallic finishes. Each gorgeous shade was inspired by your favorite characters, songs, and moments from Disney's beloved classic, Cinderella. With a magical dual-ended brush included, you'll create looks that are absolutely magical. The packaging is absolutely stunning. Like, this is really beautiful. This makes me want to go to the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique and look like a Texan pageant baby, okay? Like, this is giving me all the feels right now. When you open the palette up, you get 14 shades. You do get this lovely dual-sided brush. You get this mirror, but most importantly, look at the pan designs. The pan embossings are absolutely gorgeous. Granted, some of them have rubbed off because I put my grubby little mitts in it, but seriously, when it first got it, it was absolutely stunning. The dual-sided brush is great quality. It's the standard Sigma quality, so if you do like that, rest assured that the brush is exactly the same. And this is like a nice weight, and I do like that it's dual-sided and it matches the palette perfectly. And finally, a brush that I'll actually want to use as opposed to just throwing it out immediately. So we got that going for ourselves here. Now, there are a few different finishes in this palette, so just to make things easier, let's just go by shade. And I'm going to start with the top row up here. The first shade is Wishful, and Wishful is described as a luxe pearl metallic. This was a great shade not only on the lid, but the inner corner as well. It's beautifully pigmented and I didn't experience any sort of issues with it. It's one of those shades that I feel like it's timeless, and no matter who you are, what you look like, whatever, everyone's gonna look beautiful in it. It's just like one of those classic shades. The shade next to that is Pumpkin, and it's described as a neutral fawn matte. Listen, this was a great boring brown shade, and this is probably the one shade that I just kept using time and time again because in regards to any sort of transition or crease shades, it's kind of limited. So this was the one that I would always use to start the look. But with that said, it's beautifully pigmented. It blends very easily, and I didn't experience any sort of issues with patchiness or longevity. It was great. The shade next to that is Fantasy, and it's a purple grape shimmer. Honestly, I think probably the best thing about this palette is some of the metallics and shimmers. This particular purple was so pretty. It's incredibly smoky. And I mean that in the best way possible. Like, it's just such a unique, pretty purple. It applied very well with glitter glue, and I didn't experience any issues with fallout. The shade after that is Courtyard, and it's described as a deep juniper matte. I really just wanted to like this shade more. You know, I think both the blues and the purple in this palette, they're not great. I found this one though in particular to be very, very thin. So I had to keep layering the shade just to have a solid opacity. And it's funny because it's like once I built it up, I added the shade Hopeful, which is the darker blue shade down here, just to kind of add a little bit of dimension to it. And it kind of all blended exactly the same. It looked the same. I couldn't tell the difference between the two. And it was another one that I just had to keep like layering on because the opacity was just so fucking thin. The longevity sucks on it. After a few hours, there's just like noticeable holes in my eyes. Like, it was a mess. Not a fan of the shade, which sucks because it's such a pretty color, but very disappointing. The shade next to that is One of a Kind, and One of a Kind is described as a vibrant silver shimmer. This is a pretty shade, but I wanted a little bit more. You know, when I hear silver, I'm expecting like Silver Surfer's dick, okay? And I didn't get that here. If anything, it's a very pretty silver, but the sparkles on top of the shade kind of give it more of like a lavender flare. It's pretty, but like, I wanted more. Like, I guess what I was hoping for is like, when you hear silver, I think metallic. I think Tin Man dick, that's what I want to see. And that's all I'm looking for, y'all, okay? But not this. It was like, it was a nice silver, but like it was missing something for me to be like truly a standout shade. Nevertheless, I applied the shade with some glitter glue, and yeah, there was some fallout, but not the end of the world. It's okay. It's just, I wanted more. The shade next to that is Kindness, and it's described as a purple sangria matte. And listen, much like Courtyard, I just wanted more. I wanted more. This shade initially applies pigmented. However, as you start to blend, it's one of those shades that just creates a harsh line. No matter what you do, no matter what other shade you use to try to like combat it, it's just one big harsh fucking line. It's impossible to get rid of. It just becomes like kind of patchy and just hard to use. And just, again, no matter what you even layer on top of it, it just vanishes just to leave this really difficult fucking line to fix. I hate it. I'm not a fan of this shade. And definitely this was my least favorite shade in the whole palette. And the last shade in this row is Charming. This is another shade that I just wanted more. It's described as a canary gold metallic. And I think like when you pair it with the purples, I was kind of hoping for like this really beautiful metallic pop, but it's not as metallic as the other metallics in this palette. It's kind of like a lackluster shimmer in a way. It does have a little bit more of a pop when you do add a little saturation, but it doesn't look as good as Wishful. It's an easy pass. Starting with the second row, we have the shade Mischievous, which this is a charcoal black matte shade. The shade wasn't bad. I like the shade. I thought it worked really well as a lash line shade, as well as an outer corner shade. I didn't experience any patchiness or difficulty blending when using the product. And I really do appreciate that you can control pigmentation. So you can go in with a heavy hand and it's gonna be like, bam, like fuck me up. But if you do go in a little bit at a time, you could definitely control it so it doesn't look like it's a black abyss on your eyelid. It does provide a lot of dimensions for the looks. And is probably the one shade that I kept going back to because the other darker mattes just fucking failed that for me. Like I wanted to use the purples and the blues to add the dimension, and instead those are the ones that lifted. This black shade didn't lift, so that's good. The shade next to that is Dressmakers, and this is a peachy gold metallic. It's actually what I have on my eyelid today, and this operated very much the same as Wishful. Again, it's just one of those shades that's just beautifully metallic, super great longevity. I think anybody and everybody would look good in this shade. It's just solid. So like the difference between the two is that Wishful is more of like a white kind of pearl shade, and this is definitely more of a peach shade. Still beautiful. And I really wish that all the metallics and the shimmers operated like the two, but alas they don't. The shade next to that is Cinders, and it's a soot brown matte shade. This one was fine. I used this shade primarily just to deepen up the crease area. I think this mixed with pumpkin worked very beautifully. That's again what I have on my face today. You know, they're basic bitch colors, like not really gonna be winning any fucking awards, but they're solid and I like that. So the formula pretty much operates exactly like pumpkin. Love that. The shade next to that one is Sweet Nightingale, and it's a turquoise green metallic. And again, it's another shade that just leaves me wanting more. It's not as robust as Dressmakers or Wishful. It's still a very pretty shade. Like it's fucking pretty, but like when you compare it to a metallic formula in this palette, it's like, well, why can't everything be like this? I don't know. Like I wanted to have a little bit more of a pop. Basically at the end of the day, I was just looking for more of like a wet alien slut moment, and I was not having that. The longevity was fine. I didn't experience any glitter bukkake. It adhered to a brush fine. I think with the finger it was a little bit more impactful, but this is one of the shades that I did have to build up just to have a more substantial opacity. But yeah, it was okay. It's just, I just wanted more. It was just okay. The shade next to that one is Hopeful, and that is an indigo blue matte. Much like Courtyard, this shade leaves much to be desired. It's thin, has okay pigmentation. You start to build up, it can get a touch messy. You get a lot of fallout in the lower lash line area. And of course, when you pair it with certain shades, it just gets a little muddy. I would say the worst thing about this shade is the longevity. After a few hours, there are noticeable holes in my eye looks. And you know, I know that usually kind of comes with the territory with these kind of rich shades like this, but like this was just disappointing on a whole other level because of how fast it started to bald. I don't know. It's like a shame because in pan it's such a beautiful rich shade, but it's awful. The next shade is Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, which is described as a purple iris with turquoise glitter. And the shade wasn't bad. I do like that it is a dark tone, cool purple. And I do like the addition of the turquoise in the shade. It provides a bit of pop, but the bitch is fucking messy. So you have to be careful, otherwise you're gonna have rogue glitter bukkake all over your face. And while I did apply it with some glitter glue, I did get a fair amount of fallout still with the glitter glue. But what was nice is that at least it didn't fall throughout the day. So just upon initial application, the bitch is messy, but at least she doesn't like shit all over your face for the rest of the day. And last but certainly not least, we have the shade Stroke of Midnight, which is a dark chocolate brown matte. And it's fine. It's fine. Kind of serves as the other darkest shade in this palette. So I kept going back and forth between this shade and Mischievous just to kind of deepen the outer corner or use it as a lower lash line shade. And yeah, it was fine. It was pigmented. pigmented, it was easy to use, and it definitely provided dimension. So I'm not mad about that. You know, I think to say I'm disappointed is a fucking understatement at this point. I had such good experience with the Ambiance palette. So I know I used to dog Sigma in the past, like fuck Sigma. And then I tried the Ambiance collection, or at least that palette, as well as the highlighter palette, and I changed my tune completely. It's become one of my favorite palettes I have ever used. Like, I love it. And I was so hoping that the quality in this palette would mirror that palette, but it didn't. It's unfortunate because the more colorful shades in this palette didn't operate like the more basic neutral shades in this palette. Like, I don't know what the fuck happened, but they were more challenging to use, they were patchy, and the longevity was hot water trash, which again is so wild because I didn't experience that with the Ambiance palette. Also, I really didn't appreciate that both blues on the eye, when used together, they look the same. Doesn't fucking make sense because, like, looking at it in pan, you can tell they're two different tones, but on the eye, the same. I hate that. I hate when shades do that. I also really hated that dark blue lacked any sort of dimension. Like, that's fucking annoying. I think the only selling point on this whole palette is the metallic shades, but again, not every metallic is created equally, right? Some left me wanting more, but definitely they're a hell of a lot more usable than some of the mattes. I really had high hopes for this collection because this is such a beautiful take on the Cinderella color story. And honestly, I really think it's very perfect and apropos for the time of the year we're in. It's like fall Cinderella, she's moody but fun. Yes, you do have some pops of basic bitch, but at the same time, you have these pops of opulence that just makes it just a little bit different. And it makes me excited to want to create looks. By looking at this palette, you can tell you can get a lot of use out of it regarding how many looks you can create. This can definitely be a standalone palette. However, it now becomes a pricey companion palette based on the quality of the shadows, because you're gonna need other palettes to create your looks. It sucks. Like, this, I feel like had so much possibility, but it's just fucking quality is just so like up and down. So as I mentioned in the beginning, had I paid full price, had I paid $49, I would have fucking rioted. But since I didn't pay full price, I only paid $35. And again, while that's still not as good, I'm still kind of mad about it. At least I didn't pay $50. So yeah, I don't know. Listen, I think I have my guard back up with Sigma, which is sad. So I don't recommend checking this out, even if it's fucking for $35. I still don't recommend checking this out. Go look at the Ambiance palette. That is just far better. Yeah, and fuck, maybe it's just me. Maybe I got a shit palette. Like, I really want to hope I got a shit palette, but fuck, I hate it. I hate it. It's not worth the money or the headache, so skip ahead. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about the cheek duo. This retails for $35. Live happily ever after with this gorgeous pressed powder duo featuring a rosy blush and lustrous highlight, inspired by the romantic ambiance of the royal ball. These shades will have you looking and feeling all aglow in no time. So much like the eyeshadow palette comes in similar packaging, it has a good quality mirror, and you get one highlighter and one blush, and the pan embossing, bitch, I'm living for this. And I really do love how the packaging ties right into the eyeshadow palette. It's so cute. Like, these are so cute. So let's start with the blush first, which is the shade Ever After. This bitch is pigmented. She's pigmented. This is described as a peachy pink matte. It applies beautifully to the skin. Just be careful you do not use a lot of product. When I first used this, I was like, holy shit. It does blend out, but it's still very, very strong pigmentation. So if you do get like a little too Annabelle doll for your liking, you're gonna have to use like a setting powder just to kind of diffuse how fucking strong it is. Powder will definitely soften the look. I'm happy to report that I didn't experience any patchiness with this product. It melted beautifully into the skin and the longevity was fantastic. It's interesting though that this blush is a little bit more on the warmer side. So I think like the look I have today, like it pairs great with, but you know, some of the more like blue shadows in this palette, it kind of was just very, I don't know, like it looked a little funky to me. So I feel like you have to really be careful, I guess, with what eye look you pair it with, because it's such a strong peachy pink color. You know, overall, that said, listen, I thought it was great. Quality was great. I can fuck with it. I love it. And the pan embossing, beautiful bitch. And again, as a weirdo Disney adult, I salute it, okay? Like, I fucking love it. And this is where it goes downhill. The highlighter, okay? The highlighter. So this one's called A Glow, and it's described as a bright coconut metallic, whatever the fuck that means. When applied to the cheekbone, this shit is blinding, like blinding, bitch. And I was about to be like, oh, you know what? Yes, the eyeshadow palette sucks ass for days, but at least the highlighter will save me. No, it didn't. When I started to buff the highlighter into the skin, it just disappeared. Apparently my highlighter went out for a pack of cigarettes because it didn't want to be a dad anymore, okay? Like, that's what happened. I was like, where the fuck did it go? So I tried it again, and I was still getting the same effect. I had to layer the product on like 3 or 4 times for it to really kind of stick, which was weird. And then I would have to shoot myself with a bunch of fucking setting spray just to make sure it sticks. Let it dry, and then try to buff it out so it doesn't look like a fucking stripe on my face. A lot of hand holding. A lot of hand holding for like okay payoff. Like, it's just, it's like this whole collection. Literally, it's like, you want to make something really cool? Great. Let's also shoot ourselves in the foot at the same time. Like, it sucks. I think today is probably the best iteration of this, but I had to build up this product a lot. Like, I had to like put it on, buff it in, go back, buff it in, go back, buff it. Like, I had to like keep building it, which is so wild to me. And the other kicker is that the longevity is fucking terrible on this. So while the blush does a really good job of staying put, the highlighter doesn't. So after a few hours, like, mind you, I literally just put on this makeup right as I started this video, but give me a couple of hours and this shit is just like non-existent. It's so wild how it just dissipates on my skin. When I compare it to the Glow Kiss palette, like, that palette's fantastic. And it actually is one of my favorite highlighter palettes of 2021. That's what I was hoping for, like, the same kind of quality, but it wasn't. I don't know what the fuck this is. I think when it comes to like just Disney collabs, like, the quality is never as good as I want it to be. I don't know, like, I feel like companies are probably like, it's Disney, people are gonna buy it anyway, so we don't have to go the extra mile. God, I hate it. I hate it. So listen, either I got shit products or those ambiance palettes are like one-offs. Because everybody that I talk shit about Sigma is always like, no girl, Sigma's great. And I'm like, yeah, right. And then those palettes changed my mind. But now I'm like, no, I'm kind of back to being like Sigma's, So I don't know. It's so unfortunate because I have seen reviews and people have really enjoyed this collection, but I don't know what happened to mine. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, this retails for $35. I actually got it for $24. Still way too much money just for a blush that works pretty good. Honestly, I would totally skip out on this collection and go get the basic bitch ambiance collection. That's just way fucking better. So with that said, yeah, I wasted my money so you didn't have to. At least I wasted it on a discount. I gotta look at the bright side somewhere, right? Anyway, let me know down below if you picked up any of this collection and if you had a different experience, because I feel like I'm the only one. So make me feel worse in the comments below. But no, seriously, I love hearing from you, so let me know. And with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it as always. Feel free to like, comment, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and hit that bell icon for notification of all my future posts. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, to all my beautiful, wonderful patron bubbies. Thank you so much for keeping this delicious, disgusting, filthy, trashy, really filthy, really gross garbage boat afloat. I couldn't do without you, and I love your adorable little delicious faces. And I just want to gobble you all up. I just want to be one with you, and we can watch Cinderella and forget about this awful, awful collection. If you want to know what is currently on my face, along with where to get these products, everything will be listed in the description box below. And I'll see you little pumpkins later. Bye.